All right, how are you guys doing? Can you hear me? Just type in there yes or no, or maybe so. Welcome, welcome. It is week 3, you guys. We are in the halfway point of this class. Isn't that crazy? We're like midweek here. I should say mid-mod, really. Yes, welcome, welcome. Great to see you guys in here. It's just crazy how fast this goes. In regards to are you talking about the learning coach? Let me see her. It is, I think I posted her schedule here. Yes, Monday closed based on Tara's schedule. Okay. Yes, she has different hours. All right, don't forget tomorrow we have, I think the center's still open. I think just Tara's individual schedule. Yeah. So don't forget, tomorrow we also have a multi-session at the same time. So if you need extra help, that's a good time to come in. Okay. I just want to kind of, and I sent out an announcement yesterday about this, your week 2 work, and I can understand why it was a little unclear in the assignment instructions. However, I did address this in lecture. So what I need for you guys to do is, if I commented in the grade book, go in and check to see if I commented. If you got a low grade or if you got a 0, read my comments. Most likely, because a lot of you guys did not submit your AI file for assignment 2. The reason being why I said please submit an AI file is because I'm not able to see on a PDF whether or not you were able to correctly add Pantone colors to your logo and swatches, and also I cannot see if you converted them to CMYK correctly, because a PDF file is just a flat file and I can't go in there and actually look at your palettes and your layers and all that good stuff. So make sure, just submit it. You guys won't be dinged in any way for it being, obviously it's not going to be late, but I will look through that and reevaluate and give you guys a proper grade that needs to be, given. So don't feel like you're going to be sitting at that low grade. All right. So yeah, we'll, if you have any questions about that, we're going to do a little different today. Going forward in this class, we'll just kind of wait for questions at the end here. You can always type in the chat, but as far as turning on mics, we'll just wait until the end so that there's no confusion and, kind of go straight through here. But, feel free to obviously type in the chat area too during the time here. Okay, so as we go forward, just looking at announcements, make sure you're taking a look at that. I also posted something in announcements of my past work, so you can definitely check that out. We will be going over your discussion 3, I don't have it on this list, your assignment 3, which will be your trifold brochure, and then your assessment 3, which will be your signage piece. Now don't forget your logo that you created in assignment 2, the one that you chose for your poster, you want to make sure that that's consistent on all of your pieces going forward. Meaning I shouldn't see, and sometimes I see this, the color changes from one project to another. It should be consistently the same throughout each pieces, like going forward here. All right, so let's go ahead and quickly look at Canvas here. Just take a look at your learning, week 3 learning objectives. And again, just kind of go over announcements here. Oops. That's a little video you can check out. So the learning objectives that you guys will be walking away from this week is, and some of this is basically some of these learning objectives you already kind of went through last week too, but you're going to differentiate between spot, Pantone, RGB, and CMYK color models. It's really important to understand the differences because different color modes are for different purposes. So for instance, If you want a spot color for color consistency, you'll need to know how to create a spot color, which is a Pantone color. RGB is basically for web screen viewing purposes, and CMYK is for printed pieces. So it's important to know how to convert those for different situations. Distinguish the similarities and differences between raster images and vector graphics. That's another important thing to understand, because if we're not in the correct software for a certain graphic, like for instance, if you are creating a logo in Photoshop, that's probably not the correct software to be doing that in, because that's a raster based program. It is dependent upon pixels. So you may have issues when you go to resize the logo itself. So vector based programs are best to do that type of work in. Now, if you're manipulating photographs, obviously then you will use a raster based program like Photoshop, where you're manipulating those individual pixels. So it's important to understand the differences and the similarities. Distinguish the differences between Pantone, RGB, and CMYK gamut. Set up margins, columns, and bleeds in a document for correct pre-press output. To create a packaged print-ready pre-press file and create a print-ready PDF. I have to say that's one of the things last week that I was kind of a little disappointed with, in terms of seeing some of you guys trying to package files correctly. So make sure you're doing that in a correct way. That's something that you need to really know how to do in the fundamental basic parts of being a designer. So you know, I like to go over that every single time we have a lecture, so that we, you know, understand the process on how to do that. All right, but you know, obviously there are some of you guys who do get it, so that's great. For those of you who have not, you know, just make sure you're going through the lectures. If you cannot be here live, it's important to listen to the recordings, because I do demos. I do step-by-step demos on how to do everything. So if you have any type of question, it should be clarified through the demos. If not, you know, obviously reach out to me. Okay, in announcements, again, just wanted to point out real quick, I did post the learning coach schedule. We just looked at that. What we'll be doing this week in week 3. And, you know, a couple of things just to kind of keep in mind about color consistency. And this is the project that I worked on, so you definitely can check this out. These are 2 posters that I created. I actually did the whole event concept as well, and designed all the pieces to go with it. Here's a link to the entire event. I think it's neat to see like a brand pieces coming together that look consistent. Thanks. Yeah, it was really a really interesting event, very eye-opening, and it was nice because I got a lot of help within the community. Like for instance, these posters I had printed for free from local printers for the cause. So the fire looks real. Yeah, so I was actually inspired by this quote here: "If you light a lamp for somebody, it will also brighten your path." And that's kind of what kind of pushed me into this concept. So it was more of an experience, the event itself, than just you going and donating money. You were actually part of that experience of lighting up a number at the end of the event. And the number was, at that time, how many people homeless in the Tampa area. So definitely check that out. It's kind of cool. I know some of you guys want to see some of the things I've done, so that is one example. Just a reminder, again, week 2 work, if you have something to resubmit, this is just a quick reminder. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Okay, before we go forward into our lecture, I wanted to go over your discussion 3, see if you have any questions. And again, we're going to be discussing vector and raster files. And it just kind of in the background gives you an idea of why it's important to know the differences. As we go into the prompt, so you can read through that background, you're given a kind of like something to think about. Like imagine that you have just landed a great design job. The client would like you to produce a billboard for his company, along with a brochure and some promotional items like embroidered hats and jackets. The company has a logo that they have used for years, and they are sticking with their current brand. The client instructs you to go to their website and grab the logo from their homepage, saying that is where their others have gotten it from the past, and that is the only logo that exists. For this initial post, address the following questions. 1, will this logo work for the projects you've been hired to do? Why or why not? Number 2, how do you explain your dilemma to the client? And 3, how does color gamut figure into this? So this is kind of funny because this scenario comes up a lot, will come up a lot in your experience, and I can totally foresee it for you guys too. I actually just had a client come to my house recently, and I was helping her with her branding materials and her website. And I told her, gather all of your logo materials so that, we can get started and I can get your website up and it'll be simple, blah, 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 blah. She said, okay, no problem. So she comes to my house, we sit down, she gives me her files, right? And it's all, raster-based images. They're like JPEGs, nothing, there's no working files. There's no AI files. And, my question to her was, and a lot of clients don't understand that either. Like she had no idea. So you kind of have to explain it to her, explain it to a client in regards to layman's terms, like where was this, who designed this logo? If it's a pre-existing logo, you need to find out where that source came from. So in this example, I asked her, who was the original designer for this? And she had given me his contact information, whom I then contacted and asked for the native files. So that's another way around it, where you're not explaining everything to the client because they don't understand the technical parts of it, but just to know, to tell them and educate them, this won't work because if we were to ever use this and blow it up in any type of way, it's going to lose quality. So, how do you explain this to the client? Will this project, do you think this will work for this project for a billboard if you're just pulling it off of the website? Talk about that. Talk about what issues could arise and how you would speak to the client and, tell them about the issues that may arise. You may even show examples of past work. That's another thing. You can show visual examples to your clients. Say, this is what a logo looks like when you use a small raster-based image logo and you try to blow it up on a billboard. You might find a really good life-like example like that. Does iron on count? I think in any type of way that you apply a logo, you want to make sure that you create the logo from scratch in a vector-based program, yeah. Because any type of application, whether it be like how you transfer it onto different materials, you want to make sure that logo is the best quality image possible. Because an iron-on, you can make that really big on a t-shirt or a blanket or whatever. So you want to make sure that that logo is a vector-based logo from the start. So any questions about that? And just make sure, you're replying to other peer posts. You might bring up different perspectives in that regards, based on what they post. In this discussion, they're just talking about it hypothetically. No, there's no actual visual logo. They're just taking it like it's a hypothetical logo that they're just taking off of offline or online, I should say. Yep. So you won't actually find the actual logo in regards to this prompted question, but you might find an actual visual example of what you could show a client. you know, say, hey, this is what it could look like. Okay. All right. So kind of, you know, it's a great discussion to talk about because it makes you more aware of what works, what doesn't work, and how to kind of talk to the client about it because you will most likely have that issue going forward. And it's just because clients don't know. They're, you know, they didn't go to school for the most part, probably for design. Some have. You might run into some that do have more design experience, but for the most part, it's basically they're looking to you as being the expert for the most part. So, and there's a way that you can educate them without making them overwhelmed as well. So it's how you say it. All right. So going forward here, again, due dates. We don't have to go over that. We go over that every week. That's the discussion. Let's talk about the printing process. There's a way, and we talk about this because we want to make sure we understand the steps that we go through. And it's hard as an online student and even just any student to understand this printing process if you haven't gone through it. So step one, when you get a project, you define the project. So you get the project details from a client. And this is kind of goes into your design processes too. This is the same type of process steps that you go through. So step one, you define the project, which means you gather all the requirements, you know, what's needed, you know, what's the problem, how are you going to, you know, answer this problem, what, you know, in regards to everything in regards to the budget and the schedule. You're going to discuss output quality, initial design ideas. This is kind of the first step of a printed piece that you would do for a client. Then step two, you would select a vendor. And typically this is done pretty early in the process. So when you're kind of thinking about what needs to be done, you should probably get in contact with a printer, a vendor of some sort, so that you can have it ready to go. Some printers need a heads up before printing because they're backed up. They can be very busy. So sometimes it could take a couple weeks, you know, sometimes not so much. So if you need something right away, that's something you'll want to definitely think ahead to call. And also, certain printers can only do so many things. Some have other capabilities. So if there's something in particular like that you need, there's so many different arrays of things that could be talked about in regards to this, like bindings and die cuts, special printing processes that you might need done for a particular project. You might need to make sure that that actual printer does it. And a lot of the times too, you might want to contact 3 vendors, printers, for quotes, you know, because some may be really high priced and not within the budget. Step 3, pre-press and design. Oh, I missed the marks under there. Sorry. Evaluate printers and service providers. Establish a process and choose the elements of the project, paper and ink. So you kind of choose those. Once you do choose a printer, you'll definitely get into those specs. And then step 3, pre-press and design. So you're going to assign elements of the job. So you're kind of getting, you know, if you need to do spot colors, which is Pantone colors, you can assign those, for instance. You implement the design at this point, craft the project, prep files for output. So you kind of start getting all your images, high res, you know, the files that need to be in there for printing purposes, color modes need to be converted for prints, for example. Then you review the design. This can be done through you and the clients. If you're in-house, you may do this before you send it to the client. You can also speak to the printer, you know, beforehand to see if everything's in place. All right, step 4 is hand it off. So now you're ready. You got all the okays from the client. You hand it off and you get a proof possibly. So sometimes you will do like press checks. That'll be coming in the next step here, but you discuss printing issues possibly if that comes up. And there are some possible issues depending on the project itself. You might expect something to come out a certain way, and if it doesn't, you need to correct it. And that's just communicating with the printer is super important. Send files to film, plates, pre-press. So typically, and this is kind of my experience, I've called to talk to the printer. Sometimes I even go in to talk to the printer, and sometimes we just email. But you pretty much, each printer has their own way of going through a printing process. On their website, they usually have what they want in terms of files for you to send to them, final files. Some of them want a high-res PDF. Some of them want a packaged final file with the original working file in there. If they have issues, they have designers on staff, some of them, that they can work with you to kind of do last minute changes. And then establish a proofing method. If you need to get proofs done, color proofs done, you can establish that in regards to that. And even just seeing something, before it prints out thousands of prints before you find something's wrong with it, you can have like a mock-up printed just beforehand. Step 5 is proof and print. Check placement of graphics and copy, review press proofs, and observe assembly. I've gone in many times for press checks or when a designer goes in. Sometimes the clients are present during press checks. You don't necessarily have to be there, but sometimes it could be a good thing, especially if it's a big project, to make sure everything's going smoothly. Sometimes clients want you there to review before they sign off. So I've had a big client, Alcoa is a big aluminum company here in Pittsburgh. When I worked for an ad agency here in Pittsburgh, we worked on a lot of their benefit guides. So there was a lot of copy within these benefits, or health benefits and all that good stuff. So they wanted to be present in every press check, and they would actually look at every single page, which was kind of tedious. But think about it. If something's wrong in one of your health benefit manuals, it's a big deal. So in that regards, they were very tedious and very they wanted to be there hands-on, and then they would sign off on it, which was a good thing, because if something were to be screwed up, if they weren't there to sign off on it, they might point the finger at you as a designer as being the person that said okay. So sometimes it's a good thing to cover your end if it's a meticulous project such as that. But that's what a press check is for. And press checks are kind of neat to go to, because you get to see the press process, see the printing presses, and just talking to the printers, and they're really happy to talk with you too and help you kind of understand that. So it's kind of neat to see that. So we went through the printing process here and selecting. So there's so many details in this, and defining the project, selecting vendors we just talked about, things to consider in terms of the final project. The page count, is there binding, what type of paper, what type of color information is included, is it just CMYK, or is there any spot colors? And then the quantity of how much you need printed. I worked for a publication company, and we did monthly magazines, and they would have, thousands. I'm talking like 20 to 30,000 magazines printed monthly, for one particular publication. So it was really kind of an interesting process to speak with printers in regards to quantity and how everything's, wrapped up and shipped out. Yep. Working with your printer. Again, we just talked about this timeline, press checks, proofs, shipping, if there needs to be shipped from their place, that's also something to think about. So it's really important to build a relationship through your printer. Yes. There's different presses too. If I worked for several ad agencies where actual printers would come in and try to woo us, try to have us come to, just like paper companies, paper reps, so that we would go with their business. So it's kind of neat to, and they always like to buy you lunch and all that good stuff, so you can get some good perks out of that. Yeah. In the printing process too, there's the thing called pagination, and if you ever heard of that. imposition, and signatures. So your layout program in InDesign, or you've probably saw this in Pages here. This is a facing Pages. You can see it in Pages if you have it under checked in facing Pages in the setup. It will order your pages as you view them in the finished binding, so you can see that as it is here. This includes a front and back page and 2 page spreads. So to utilize both fronts and backs of each page in a spine-bound print job, you need to have a multiple of 4 for your page count, or some pages will end up blank. So this is kind of the confusing part, but why page counts for printing are multiples of 4. So during printing, your pages are printed on large sheets of paper that holds, depending on your book size, about 8, 16, or 32 pages. All multiples of 4. So before you can see this large sheet of paper, known as a parent sheet, that's what they call it, with 8 pages printed on both sides, you have 16 total, because 8 and 8 equals 16. After printing, these sheets are folded and inserted into your book as a whole unit if you're doing a multiple page type of publication. If your page count was not a multiple of 4, you could be left with blank pages throughout your book. So here's an example of that. Folding a parent sheet. You can see below that is a parent sheet being folded in half. So there's 8 on each side. And this is kind of how it's folded. This is something that you won't have to worry about physically doing. This is what the printer does, but just making sure that you have at least 4 pages if you have a multiple page document. Knowing that you have this so that you don't have any empty pages is what's important. This can get a little confusing, but again, the printer pretty much has a lot of control over this. It's just kind of understanding this as a designer as well. So pagination, imposition, and signatures. Basically, it consists in the arrangement of the printed product pages on the printer sheet. So in order to obtain faster printing, simplify binding, and reduce paper waste. And imposition is one of the fundamental steps in the pre-press printing process. Your printer will set this up from your bid and file, so you don't have to worry about this. Yeah, so like once you kind of understand the arrangement of the printed pages on the printer sheet, so this is something that's a little bit more technical and what we see, because this is what how the printer will organize it on their side. Well, once they get your file, knowing that your pages are set up correctly in that I showed you here, as long as you don't have any like odd number pages, and you have to have a multiples of 4, you're good. Yep. So this is a little bit, again, more information here. Most publications are produced by printing 8 pages on one side of a large paper sheet, then 8 more pages on the other side. So a 16-page signature is what that's called. This can vary depending on your page and paper size. This large sheet is then folded and trimmed, and the resulting set of pages is called a signature. Yeah, so it would have to be, like an even number. Yep, with 4. Yep, so bleeds and trim, you've heard of those terms before. To accommodate the slight variations that will happen as the sheet is fed through the printer and the pages are trimmed, you need to set up your pages with a bleed. So your printer will determine what your bleed should be, usually about a 1/8, so 0.125. It's also important that your design allows for the space the binding will take up in the spine. This is another reason why once you start a project and you're ready to lay it out, you need to make sure you know who the printer is, because some have different bleed specifications. Mostly they're defaulted at 1/8, but some of them are a little different. So you might want to definitely have a printer in mind, and then go to their specs page to make sure you have everything lined up. So do we want to be to the edge or the bleed, depending on the paper? Well, it depends on the design too. So if you don't have anything bleeding off, say if you're just doing like a book and all the information is in the margin space, then you don't have to worry about a bleed. But if you have any type of imagery, Anything that needs to go off the trim edge, you need to have a bleed. So here's just an example here of different orientations, the standard orientation, 8.5 by 11 with a trim size of 8.25 by 10.75. And then a digest size. Some of, you might not always have the same standard size, a digest landscape and a flyer size. So typically they'll tell you on the website, what the bleed should be, and then you adjust your layout in InDesign or whatever program that you're using to adhere to that. You also have bindings. These are always fun. There's different types of bindings, just like there are paper. There's 3-ring. So this would be 3 punch holes in the left side of printed pages, a common format for 3-ring binders. There are spirals. They're coils wound through the top or left margins of printed pages. There's saddle stitch, 2 or more staples inserted at fold. And then there's perfect all signatures put together, then ground down and paper cover glued around the spine. There's also this really, really useful, and I'm going to paste it in our chat here. I'll post this in announcements as well because some of you guys can't get to the chat area. But this link here will take you to this very useful website, which you can, here, hold on, let me zoom out here. Bookmark. I don't know why this is so dark. Got somewhere weird here. But what's neat about this is it's actually showing you the types of binding and how many pages would be required for each of these. If you were to think about, hey, I want to do this, how many pages would I have to have minimum and maximum? Also down here kind of shows you a nice little infographic, I don't want to say infographic, pictogram of a picture of what each of these different types of bindings are. And so if you're unfamiliar with what a plastic grip would be for, or screw bound, you can definitely check that out. And then you can see a little anatomy of a book, hard book cover. And I think there's other things in here too, designer resources you could check out. Yep, I will post that for sure. So definitely a good resource to have. So some projects may be folded instead of bound. This requires that you think carefully about how the different sides of the sheets will flow together once they're folded. The best way to envision this is to make a physical mock-up. Yep, cheat sheet. And lay out your document accordingly. I've done tons and tons of mock-ups. I can't even tell you how many mock-ups I've had. In an ad agency back in my day, in the older days, we would have an actual room where we do spray mock-ups. You'd spray adhesive glue and have this ventilator, so you're not dying in the room. But you would spray glue the sheets together and create these mock-ups. And they're great ways to see what the actual physical piece is going to be, especially if it's more than one page or a product like label or whatever that you're utilizing that's a little bit more than just an ad in a magazine, so that you can see if it's working well, if everything is flowing right. So it's the best way to envision what it is, so that you're laying out your document accordingly. It's kind of amazing how many times I've caught mistakes going through my mock-ups before showing it to a client. So it's kind of a nice review process for you to say, ooh, I made this too big and I need to make this smaller, or, oh, I designed this panel wrong. I need to have it on this. Now that I put this together, I understand. So it kind of saves you a little bit more, I guess, embarrassment than if you see something, even spell checking it, if you're reading through it and you never caught it. Things like that definitely are great to catch in mock-ups. There's also templates available that you can use to help you lay out a folded printed document as well. These are types of folds. So, a brochure doesn't necessarily have to just be a regular folded brochure. You could have, for instance, an 8-page gatefold. You can see down there. It's kind of an interesting way of opening up, a certain piece. I've used those for surprise, revealing type of visuals. Say if you're you want to communicate an opening of some type of new store. That might be kind of a neat method to do it in a way that not only is the graphic looking like that, but also the paper is giving you that element of surprise. So, and there's accordion folds, which I think I call it accordion fold, but they call it concertina fold, 10-page right there. But there's different folds too that, you know, you should be aware of that are folds that you might want to talk to your printer about for different effects. There's also paper, and it is crazy how many types of papers are out there. We'd have paper reps coming all the time to our agency. Again, these are people that want to take you out to lunch. They want to smooze you to like sign on their actual paper, you know, company. Their paper reps that come out trying to sell this to you. Yep, and they want you to go with them. You know, think Dunder Mifflin. I don't know if you guys ever watched the show The Office. They were a printing paper company. Yep. So, you know, they were always trying to schmooze people into buying their paper. If you haven't watched the show, it's really, really good, great show. It's called The Office. And but yeah, that's kind of very true with paper reps in the design world. So they will show you different weights and different stocks, different colors, coatings, uncoated, coated, gloss. There's different textures or smoothness. There's some that are transparent or opaque that you want it like fly paper that you can add into pieces for a more dynamic look. Oh, I like those shows too. Also in the printing process, not only do you have to be aware of, sorry, my clock's chiming here, of folds and bindings possibly in paper, but there's also software and files. And this is kind of where we have to keep in mind on our end, you know, are we creating these files correctly for printed purposes? So PDF files are the standard for print job submissions. They're not always the go-to files, but they're pretty standard. So Photoshop, again, is more of an image editing, pixel-based, raster-based software. Again, you'll be doing more of image manipulation in this program. Illustrator is a vector-based program, and you do more vector designs in this, logos, graphics, icons, etc. And InDesign is a combination of text and images. Superior for double-sided and multi-page documents. Package print ready files is easy to do. And then Acrobat is also for some free pre-flight capabilities with PDF files. So raster-based image software example would be Photoshop. There's other ones out there too. Illustrator is a vector-based program. I don't know if you guys ever messed around with Freehand. Freehand's another vector-based program. So there's other ones out there, but vector-based is based on, you know, mathematical equations and points and lines. Yep. So it's interesting to point this out. In my experience as a designer working for, say, a publication, you will use all of these programs all at one time. So for example, when I'm given a magazine to do, I usually lay it out in InDesign first, all the pages in InDesign for the magazine. And then I go right to Photoshop to open up any type of cover imagery or any type of imagery that's going to be in the magazine to adjust different, you know, color things that you want to shift, or, you know, put different filters on. That's what you would do in Photoshop. Then you would save that out and place that into InDesign. And then in Illustrator, if you have any type of like graphics that you don't want to do in InDesign, that Illustrator has more freedom to do, like say using the pen tool and applying effects to that to import into InDesign. So for a cover shot, magazine shot, I would use Illustrator maybe for graphics that I could place in there that would go kind of within the body copy, you know, say shapes and stuff that I may not have as much room and freedom to do in InDesign that has a little bit more capabilities of filters and just different things in Illustrator that makes it easier to do. And then I would import that into my InDesign document for layout. I also would lay out all the type in InDesign in regards to, you know, the body copy. All right, any questions about any of that? I know it's a lot of information, but definitely something to keep in mind when you're thinking about, starting a project. Okay, so we're going to go right into your assignment here. Let me open this up. Your assessment 2 will be a little easier than your assignment 3 will definitely take you longer. So just kind of an FYI here. Assignment 3 is going to be your trifold brochure. And this is going to go with your poster. So you want to make sure it's cohesive. And what I mean by that is you want to make sure that the logo that you created, that you chose, your color scheme, and then you applied it to your printed poster, you want to make sure that's the same logo, same color scheme that you're using in your brochure. Okay, so this is going to be very technical in terms of how you're setting this up, but once you get into this, I think you guys will enjoy this and have fun with it. It's a lot of information, and that is why setting this up in a certain way is important to do before diving right into it. That's a great pick. All right, so do you guys know what flat size basically means? If I were to say design your brochure so that it's a flat size. Okay, good guesses. The flat size is basically, if you were to take a physical brochure, say a trifold, so a 3-folded brochure, and you open it up completely and you just flatten it out on your table and then you flipped it over, that's what you would see. That's the flat. And that's how you're going to design this. So you're not necessarily going to just design each panel separately. You're going to design it as a 2-page flat layout. Okay, so the first page will be kind of like where the cover will be. It will show on the cover and then the back side and then the left flat. And then the second page will be the inside. There you go. So just kind of, it might make sense to look at one so that you understand how that works. The finished size is basically the size the brochure is once it's folded. So that's the size given to the printer when the brochure is being quoted and when it's being printed to ensure that it's folded correctly. So it's important to understand the differences here. Read through this. The bleed, we just talked about, margins, gutter. Read through these. These are all familiar terms, hopefully. Just get familiar with all this. And then I'm going to go right to the prompt here. So brochures can be very powerful marketing tools if handled in the correct way. It is important that your approach to the brochure maintains any corporate branding that has been established while making an impression on the target audience. Here are a few brochure tips to help you begin your project. So it's important to know who your target audience is. What is their age? What is their income? What role do they have in the family? Are they primarily male or female? What is important to them? So kind of mapping this out, your target audience is kind of like the demographics of, well, who you believe is going to be the sole person buying into the product, the service, the idea that you're putting out there. Gathering this information in the beginning is super important because you might not be talking to the correct target audience and then you might miss the mark. So I always like to think of it as if your target audience was like an avatar, what would their personality be? So you can go with that approach too. And, kind of explain who this avatar is, have fun with it. Spend considerable time designing the cover of your brochure. Think about that. It is the reason a potential client will pick it up or pass it by. So when you have your brochure sitting there on the countertop or wherever it's being shown, you're just seeing the cover at first, right? So that's why it's important to make your cover as enticing as possible visually. So you definitely want to keep it simple. You don't want to have a ton of copy on it. People don't want to be overwhelmed at first. You will have the copy on the inside, don't worry, but make the cover, you're kind of like the splash page, like the one that kind of pulls you in. Okay, so create a cohesive visual roadmap through your brochure, making it easy to follow and understand by using properly sized gutters. consistent margins, and a well thought out folding pattern. Yep. So that's kind of like consistency, a visual roadmap. That's like the pattern behind the principles of design that we do. Think about that. Because you have a lot of information, you're just kind of organizing the eye so it's visually easy to follow. Yep. Put first things first, lead with the strength, and then give details. We're going to be using style sheets to maintain consistency with the type. So if you're not, used to using style sheets, I'll show you how to do that. Remember, there should be no more than two sizes and 2 fonts used in your brochure. Keep your colors consistent and few, no more than 2 or 3 colors total. And they're talking about, you can obviously have photographs in there. That's more than 3 colors. They're talking about the elements that you have in there. Say if you have a color bar, obviously your logo, you want to keep it consistent with that. Employ the big 4 design principles to create focal points, hierarchy, and unity within your design. Super important. If you don't, it might be harder to read and follow, and people just don't even want to invest their time into it. Utilize a grid system to give you strong structure upon which to build. That's super important when you have a lot of information coming into one layout. So you must incorporate the following: at least 3 photos. You can download the approved photos here. You can go ahead and click on that. Create a folder, obviously, for your week 3 for this class, and go ahead and download that and throw it into your assignment 3 folder if you created one. Your final color logo and palette should also be incorporated. Paragraph styles, which we'll go over today. And then all text from this Word document. So go ahead and download that as well. All right, and that's a Word file. Your project specifications, so you're going to be doing this primarily in InDesign. So you're going to be importing all of your stuff and laying it out in there. Your flat size, your final flat size. So this is what you'll be placing into your setup, and I'll show you that in a second, is 11.875 by 9, so landscape format. 2-sided folds to 4 inches by 9 inches. Yep, your margins should be set at 0.25 inches. Bleed is 1/8. Color space. Once you're done, I would say you can start this in CMYK. I would say once you're done when you're actually going to save it out as your final file, you can convert it to CMYK. Yep. Please review this week's readings and videos for a demonstration on how to set this up correctly using 6 separate pages for the panels. All right. So after you are finished, correct? Yes. You can actually set that up before too. In InDesign, you can have it set to your CMYK if you just want to set that, right away. I'll show you that in a second here. Pre-press requirements. So all images converted to CMYK, just like we showed you in the poster, poster image, you need to take that into Photoshop and convert it to CMYK. I would actually do all of this. Let's see here, this part here. So I would do all of these bullet points pretty much right after you're done putting all of your images in place, just because you don't really know how big the image that you're using will be. So you can make sure that you're placing it in there and you can see how big the final image will be in your brochure before resizing it. And then you can go into Photoshop, resize it, and make sure it's at proper pixels per inch and that it's scaled properly, and then you can convert it. And I can show you all of that within this demonstration. Okay, bleeds correctly implemented, margins and gutters properly positioned, document packaged for print. Submission requirements, so you need to have your name filed as such for your assignment 3, and that's the InDesign file. You're going to export the InDesign file to a press quality PDF just like you did for your poster. You're going to include crop marks and bleeds. And then you're going to package your InDesign file. And once you package it, you're going to place the press quality PDF into your package folder, and then you're going to zip it for upload. Okay, so we'll go over all of this. Let's get started here. Any questions before I start the demo? Okay. Yeah, so the native file should be a part of that, which is the InDesign file. Yep. Give me 1 second here. All right, so let me see. I'm going to share my whole desktop so you guys can see what I'm doing here, and I don't have to worry about logging in and out of here. Okay, so open up your InDesign, and I kind of have this here for a second here. Just go to New Document, and go to your project specifications. And then what you're going to do is make sure you're in inches in units, and you're going to type in your final flat size. Your final flat size, though, just something to kind of show you here, because we have our bleed size, it's set to 1/8 on each side, right? So if you have, I'll show a calculator here. If you have an 8.5 by 11 document, so let's do 8.5, and then you add your 2 bleeds, so 0.125, or it would be 8.5 plus 0.25, because that's both of those bleeds together. That would make your 11 by 8.75. So that's how that final flat size is calculated. Same with your, so you have 11, and then you add your 0.25. So it'd be 11.25 for your, well, let's see here. That's weird because it's giving you an 1/8 bleed. That's really weird. Okay, hold on. It should be 11.25, not 11.875. Interesting. That's really interesting. Okay. I'm not sure if they wrote that in there correctly. Okay, so what I would definitely do is I would set your final flat size to whatever they have here so that we can kind of, adjust this accordingly. So go ahead and type in the number that they gave you for your width would be 9 inches. Just follow with their instructions here, 11.875. All right, and then what you're gonna do is scroll down here, and you're gonna set your, and that's landscape, by the way. So we're gonna set this to landscape, not portrait, sorry. So it's gonna be 11.875 by 9 tall. And you're gonna do 2 pages. You're not gonna do facing pages, so let that go. We're not doing like a, multi-page document in regards to like a magazine. So we can let that go. You can leave 1 column, that's fine. I don't know if it gives you a column with margins. Okay, so your margins, they want you to set that at 0.25 or 0.325. And you can go ahead and click this link to add it to all of your column widths there, margin widths, sorry. And then your bleed size, again, is 1/8, so that's already set here. Don't worry about a slug, ignore that, everything looks good. Okay, so you should see, if you go up to window and go to pages, you should see your 2 pages here. You can zoom out to see those 2 pages. So just to help you guys out here, let me go ahead and draw some lines in here. And we're going to be kind of in the middle. We're going to be around here. For type purposes up here, just to kind of give you an idea of what should be above these panels, I'm going to just, and you don't have to do this, but this is just so you can see this a little bit more clearly. This would be where the cover would be. Let me make this big here and bring up. Okay, hold on. I know somebody's talking, but I can't see my chat. So give me 1 second here. This would be the cover. So a lot of, people kind of confuse this and put the cover, like say over here. This is the back panel of your brochure. And then this is the fold, inside fold. So again, look at a brochure. You can kind of see how that's put together flat. And then this is inside. So this would be, and I'm just going to put this for purposes of you guys seeing this inside panel. So it'd just be like if you were to flatten this out. Somebody's typing here, hold on. Yep, 2 pages. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and save it. 114, assignment 3, first and last name. I'm just gonna save it to the desktop. All right, this is your middle point right here. That's the middle point. So your folds, hold on a second here. Okay, so this is kind of how I set it up. All right, so you could do something like this, which is really kind of helpful, which is setting up your columns. You could put your columns set to 3. So I'm going to go back to this again. So go back up to your document, I'm sorry, margins and columns, which is under your layout. So go under layout, margins and columns, and this is where you can change your columns. So I would change this to 3. Okay. And what's nice about this, does this show a gutter in here? Let me see if it's gutter. No. Okay. What's nice about this is this will show you exactly where the folds are. So you can go ahead and take your margins, your guides, and put them right in between here. Okay. So putting 3, just go up to, again, go to layout, margins, and columns, and type 3 where columns is. And then you could go ahead and draw in your vertical halfway marks. This is where your folds would be. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're keeping all of your copy. And I'm going to zoom in here. You really want to give it that same space you have here from the trim edge to your margin. So whatever that space is, I would give that consistent space on this side. So I would draw out another vertical margin guide right here and another one right here. That way you kind of know where to set your copy boxes and you're not getting, it's going to fold here, so you don't want copy to get too close here. So that's why I'm setting these margin guides to kind of give a nice guide to where I want to kind of align my copy, my body copy. I don't have to set one here because I already have one. Okay. And I think I have to adjust those because those aren't quite exactly the same here. Let's see here. There we go. 1/4 of an inch. right there. It's perfect. And you can see that number comes up and it's telling me that is exactly 7.4475. This one is exactly 8.25, so that's perfect. That's from here to here is enough space to be equaled out over here. I can copy these just by selecting them and pasting them down here. Now, if you didn't select both of your pages in your page view here, if you do a shift select, see how my margin guides didn't come up? Like I changed that to 3 here and it didn't come up here. That's because I didn't select these 2 in here to do the same changes. So you might have to go up and change this to 3 for the second one if you didn't do it the right way like I just did. Then I'm going to copy and paste in those guides down here. Is there any questions so far? Okay, so that's the cover. This is what you should focus on first. This would be the back cover, so if it's all folded up, that's what you'll see on the back. And then the inside fold would be, you know, if you're looking at it and you're folding it in, you'll see that inside fold there. All your other information is on the inside panels here. Am I going way too fast? Okay, I guess that's what's good about the recording because you can always go back and review it. And like just repeat it over and over again. Okay, so with that being said, do you remember, I'll go back to your specs here. You were to download your approved photos, so add that to your folder. And then also your Word file. Okay, so I would say go ahead and open that Word file up. Oh, not my Christmas list, sorry guys. So go ahead and, I had that open, not my Christmas list. Okay, and this is what you should see. So you have your, and the words in red aren't to be copied. That's just to tell you where to place each of these pieces of information. So you have all of this copy to place within your brochure. So I would focus on the cover first. Go ahead and copy just this part. Highlight it, copy, and take your type tool. Go ahead and do a box and then paste it in there. Oops, where am I at here? Front or back cover. So this could be on the front or the back. And you can kind of just place it here for now on the back cover. Get it out of there. And then other required copy. Now this is just something to, before you do anything, you probably should do a spell check just in case. I forgot to say that, sorry guys. So go ahead and do a spell check, looks good. I don't think there's any spelling errors, but you should do that, just be in habit of that. Go ahead and read through all of this information so you kind of understand what should come first on your panels and how you should orient it, because some of this copy would be best on certain panels by themselves. I would say probably this information here would be really well, I guess it would show great on maybe the inside flap because this is kind of separate information from this information. This kind of gives you all the details and the facts. So the inside flap would work well for that. And then all of this information is just basically talking about each adventure. So it's giving you the name, and then it's giving you the details about each one. You don't necessarily have to put this on the flap. You could have this on the inside too, but maybe this is on its own little panel, and then these are on the other two. Yep. And then the About Us, I think, should be on another panel as well, maybe the back panel or the back flat panel. And don't forget too, you have your tour package for every taste. And again, this could be on the inside. So you kind of have to think about how you're gonna show all of this information. This is kind of the tour facts with, you know, important information here. This is talking about each adventure. That's the About Us section, and then this is a tour package for every taste. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this section first, the other required copy, and I'm going to go and let's see, I'm going to paste it here on my inside fold. All right, and then I'm going to go back to that copy. Pull this information here. I keep losing it. Hold on, guys. Sorry. I'm going to take the About Us at this point because I know exactly where we're going to put that. I'm going to put this down here. How did my pages line up? I'm going to paste that in there. So the About page could be maybe on the back panel, or you might want it just on the inside fold. Kind of think about how you're going to do that. What do you mean about lining up? How did your pages to line up? I'm going to go ahead and copy this last bit of information. I'm going to put this on the inside. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and draw out my text boxes here. So I'm going to do 3 text boxes. Yep. And these text boxes should be linked, so I'll show you how to do that. I just did 3 in each panel. I'm going to click in the first one after creating all 3. I'm going to do Command V, which is paste. And then when I click the selection tool with the first text box selected, on the very bottom part here, you can see it's just like a little white box. Go ahead and click right in there, and you're going to click on the second box to link it. So these 2 are linked. So if I were to, for instance, shorten this text box up, you'll see it flow into this one. Okay, so let's link this one. Let's link this one to this one now. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. So anytime this is shortened up, I'm going to shorten these up big time so you can see them flowing into each other. That's how you would link those text boxes. I would just link the inside if you do what I'm doing here, just because the other sections up here don't really necessarily have to be linked. They might give you a hard time because if you're linking these 2 together and you don't necessarily want About Us or this part inside this panel, it's just easier to deal with it in separate text boxes in terms of, you know, setting its own panel for each text area. This will be a little easier because you have so much more panel space here that if you're adding in images, they can kind of flow from one panel to the next very easily. All right, so once you get your copy in there, go ahead and save it. We can always shift things around, so it's not like it has to be permanent, but you have all of your things placed. This is how I would do it first. All right, the next thing I would think about before doing any type of imagery either, I would set up your, let me reset my essentials here. I would set up your style sheets. Have you ever dealt with any style sheets in your past in InDesign? Have you ever? Okay. Style sheets are awesome because they are a way, and you go up to Windows and choose styles. They're a way to easily adjust a lot of information, especially for a publication where you're not manually doing it every time. You can just set your style and it will consistently change everything that's set to that style. Okay, so character styles and paragraph styles are pretty much the same thing. The only difference is character style is basically for only like one word or a subhead that's, you know, 1 or 2 words that you're just changing the emphasis on, and then a paragraph is for body copy. And you'll notice that when you open up your character styles versus your paragraph styles, you have more options for styles in paragraph just because you're dealing with a lot more copy to change. So we're going to bring up your paragraph styles. It also brings up my character in my panel box too, but we want paragraph styles. Now just kind of keep this in your mind. You will always have this basic paragraph style showing up here. It's default. So that'll always be there. And we're just going to ignore that for now. And what I want you to do is set your body copy. What is your body copy going to be style-wise, point size, leading, all of that. So I want you to determine this. For a brochure, for people who are not older, now obviously you might have older people reading this, but for a target audience that aren't going to be over a certain like age of say 65, I would say a typical general point size, depending on your typeface, would be for a brochure about 10 to 11 point size for your body copy. Now, if you're working for AARP, which has a target audience that are an older generation of people, I would obviously do a 12 point or higher. But I would stick with like a 10 to 11 point size for your body copy. Another thing to keep in mind is your ratio of your type point size for your body copy versus your leading, and that's the space in between your sentences. There's obviously there's issues when you have your copy, and I'll show you here right now. You go to character. If you have your leading, and your leading can be found, let me pull up the character box just by itself. Go to type in tables character. This is where you change the point size. You can change the font here. And then this is the leading. This is the space in between your sentences. So right now, this copy is set at 12 point, which is kind of too big, by 14 point leading. Now, I'm just for show, I'm going to show you how that line space, if you have not enough spaces in there, line spacing, it becomes really hard to read. See how crammed it looks? And then if you have it too spaced out, it's also really hard to read. So there's a nice ratio between point size and leading that you want to stay within, and that's typically a 20% ratio. So for example, if I set this to 10 point, I would set this to 14 point leading. That's a good ratio. That's just a nice balance of space based on the point size of type. So 10 point type, 14 point leading. All right, I would also stick with a typeface that's easy to read as body copy. Don't use a decorative font. A decorative font for body copy makes it really hard to read. Don't use all caps in body copy. Now that doesn't mean that you can't use that for subheads or headlines. That means I would definitely try experiment with your headlines and subheadlines with other fonts if applicable. But your body copy, you should keep it simple because it's, you have a lot of copy, so you don't want people to make it hard to read. So typically what's kind of, people usually say serif typefaces are easier to read when you have large amounts of copy because they have the footers, little feet that help you read through. But it doesn't necessarily mean you have to use serif typefaces. There's people that go with sans serif that is easy to read too. Like for instance, if you wanted to do like Avenir or something like that, that's just a nice neutral typeface that is also easy to read, just as long as you're not doing a decorative typeface. Like for instance, something like this, which I've seen students do that before. I've witnessed that, where maybe they use all like a handwriting type on. Now that wouldn't be bad for a subhead or a headline, but for body copy, it kind of gets hard to read. So you want to keep it simple. But you can use sans serif if you think that works too. Like I think that works. That looks pretty good. And what's nice about Avenir is you have a lot of different font families under here. So you can really kind of, do different things stylistic using that same font where you're keeping it cohesive. Okay. So decide on what you want to go with. Do you want to go with a serif or sans serif for your body copy? Decide the point size, the leading, and then once you're kind of, ready to go, That's when you want to set your paragraph style. So we're going to do a body copy paragraph style. So I'm going to do a select all, and you can kind of play around with this, and then once you're ready, you can select it all. Go to your paragraph style, and you're going to click on the upper right-hand corner of that panel box and choose new paragraph style. Now, you're going to name this based on that paragraph style. So I would name this body copy. And if you already have it all set and you're doing a select all like I just did, underneath you're going to go under to basic character formats under general. You're going to select that. And you're going to see that font that you chose. I chose Avenir. You're going to see the font style. You're going to see the size. If you need to adjust it, you can go back here and adjust it. There's other presets here for advanced character formats. You don't really have to worry about this. This is just adjusting scale and vertical scale and baseline shift. You don't have to worry about that. There's indents and spacing. So if you wanted it, to be aligned left or centered. Body copy, you want to keep it left aligned just because, centered is okay for smaller sections of type, but for a body copy, a larger body copy for brochures, you really want to keep it consistently to the left. Okay, and then tabs, let's see, paragraph rules. That's just kind of setting rule lines. That's typically for publications. You can kind of ignore that for now. There's borders. I would ignore that for now, just to show you the options here. You have to worry about drop caps. Character color, we could talk about that later. That's if you want to set it to a specific color. But once you're okay and everything looks good, you're going to click OK. And notice once you click OK in your paragraph style box, you're going to have your basic paragraph selected. So what you want to do is you want to, at this point, select all the body copy that you want this set to and hit body copy. Select that. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is a separate box, so I have to go and do this one. And then down here, and I'm just going to set all of this just so we can get started here. Body copy is the main text in here. Any questions about that? I just set all my body copy. Now there's subheads and different things that I need to also emphasize, but I'll get to that in a second. Okay. And I can take out the word logo here because we all know the logo needs to be on the front, but it doesn't need to be stated. Body copy. Okay. So now you can go in here and change certain things based on what you want emphasize. Okay, so go ahead and set this first. And I'm just going to zoom in on this about us first. Another thing that you can do, and I forgot to show you, see how there's, I didn't put the color in yet. Yeah, I didn't put the color in yet. See how there should be like a space after this? Instead of putting an actual space in there, I'm going to show you how to do that in a different way that's a little bit more consistent. So you take your spaces out. If you have any spaces in here, like for instance, these are spaced out. So I would just delete those spaces and just hit delete. I wouldn't go all the way up, just make sure it's kind of like there's no spaces in between. Same thing here. I'm just physically, manually going in here and just deleting those spaces out. Okay, once you get all those spaces out, double click on your body copy paragraph style again, just double click on it. That's how you can edit your style sheet. So now what we're going to do, we're going to put that space in there, but we're going to do it in a way that's more consistent than manually doing it. So what we're going to do is indents and spacing. Select that. And we're going to do a space after over here. We're going to do a space after. And then you can hit preview down here to see it. If you pull this over to the side, you might be able to see it if you have your window open here. So let's go ahead and go up on this preset here, and you'll see that space kind of applying to it. See how I go up and it's giving more and more space there? I would say stick between, I wouldn't go any lower than 0.25. or higher than 0.25, sorry. And I wouldn't go any lower than 0.125. So in between 0.125 and 0.25 is probably what I would do for, you know, visual purposes. So I'm going to put a space after about 1/4 or 1/8, sorry. And you'll see that anywhere that there was a space, it's giving me that a nice 1/4 space there, or 1/8 space. Now, some of these spaces you might not want. Like for instance, you have your, you know, I'm going to show you this one here. This is a subhead. I want this copy to be up here with the subhead. So I'm going to delete that and do a shift return to bring that back down. That shift return is basically taking that defaulted space that we just did and is still keeping that style. It's the shift return is a soft return. If you just do a regular return, it's going to put that space back in there. So a soft return allows that space to be taken out. And what you want the subheads to be closer to the copy that's underneath it so that it reads together. If it's too spaced out, it becomes harder to follow. So for instance, up here, we would do the same thing. This all looks good because there's no subheads. But let's see. Down here, shift return. Shift return. Dolphin washing. Okay, so this is all part of that. I see that. I have an error. I'll have to take a look at that in a second when we're all done here. But taking out that is definitely is good to do for purposes of keeping that all together there. It's okay if there's a space after, say, a bigger subhead, like About Us, that's okay, or Tour Facts, that's okay. I'm just talking about the smaller subheads. Okay, so looking at that, let's go ahead and create hierarchy now, once we have the spacing done. So let's take a look at there's subheads and then there's subheads. So we're going to take the About Us and we're going to create a paragraph style. You can either do a character style or a paragraph style. I'm just going to do a paragraph style, new paragraph style, just because some of my subheads might be longer than 2 words. So I'm going to keep this as a paragraph style. I'm going to just name it subhead. And I'm going to make this, let's see, let's do 14 point, and I'm going to leave the leading at auto. That just, you know, basically allows the space to be whatever is ratioed to the 14 point, allows it to set it to that. This is where I can actually change to make it more emphasized, so maybe like black as far as the font style, and I can actually change the color as well. So what I would do is just leave this until you import your logo, and then you can also make sure that your colors are consistent with your brand by bringing in your colors as swatches in here, and I'll show you how to do that. But for purposes of showing you how that changes color, I will select the red here just to show you here. So what you would do is, you know, you're going to create swatches based on your brand in here. So once you have that, and I'll show you that in a second, they'll be showing up in here once you place that in there. So I'm going to click OK. And then all you need to do is select that subhead style guide, style sheet with that actual subhead selected to apply it. Okay. So any type of subhead like these 2 subheads would be perfect for that. This is a subhead. Now I'm going to treat these a little differently, these smaller subheads down here. I'm going to make these smaller, you know, keep them at the same size, I should say, but make them emphasized, not make them as big point size as my subheads. So with that being said, I'm going to select my smaller subheads, and I'm just going to create a new style. And I'm going to name this smaller subhead, so I know in my mind what this is. I'm going to keep this the same point size, maybe just make it bold or medium. Let's do medium. And we'll make that red as well for now. Can you use paragraph and style sheets from other documents if we like the way they fit our style or each student? I would say create a style that is appropriate for this brochure. If there's a style that you created for another brochure, another piece that you like, just kind of emulate that in here, kind of how I'm showing you. Create the styles. You can import them too, but make sure that they're appropriate for the client, I guess, is all I'd be worried about. Then I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. The only thing is, okay, so this is a good thing to show you. Because I did a shift return, it's going to apply that same smaller subhead to your body copy that shouldn't be applied to. Okay, so how do we get around that? Well, let's see. Let me go ahead and delete that. Put that space back in there. Let me go to body copy here. How do we take the space out without affecting, having it change to this style? Well, this is where it gets a little tricky. If that ever happens to you, say you just did that here, let me go back here. So you took out all those spaces and now this is showing like this. Just take that space out again and do a shift return. Select that, actually do a return. So you're putting that space back in there, not a soft return. Go to body copy and then go ahead and delete that out and just do the same thing where you're doing that shift return. You're just basically setting it back to that original body copy. Oh, and then it just changed it here. Yeah, this is going to be, I'm going to have to do something else here. Hold on one second. We're going to have to do a space after. So let me do that here. Let me select this. We're going to have to do a space after your subhead. So with that smaller subhead, double click on that if that's happening to you. Click on your smaller subhead style sheet and go to indents and spacing. And you're going to take out this space that you put in there. That's what's happening there. So it's basically applying that space after that we did on the body copy, and we want to just take that space out. So where it says space after, take that down to 0 and click OK. That's what's going on there. And then what we'll do is we'll just set this to body copy, and that should be good. So again, if that happens, just go ahead and double click on your smaller copy head. We'll do that again here. Same thing here because it's showing that. There we go. Okay, so then what we'll do, smaller head. We want to do the space after. Just delete that space out, delete that space out. Body copy. I'm just kind of deleting that shift return after the subhead that I put in there. I should have probably just said, don't put the shift return in there because that's going to screw you up. So just keep it. If you have that space in between here, don't do a shift return, just keep it. And what you can do is click on your smaller subhead, like I said, and take that space out. I forgot that actually applied the body copy because I already had that applied to it. If this was just copy that I didn't apply that style guide to, it wouldn't have mattered. But because I already applied a body copy guide to it, style sheet, it's assigning it to that same space after. That's what got screwed up. All right, so that looks good. So you have that hierarchy where, you know, you're showing those sections so they all read together. Now, just be aware of any type of weird breaks here. I probably would do a shift return to pop that down to the next line so I don't have a widow. A widow would be one word on a single line. Just kind of be aware of any type of weird breaks on your, you know, along your body copy. Okay. This all looks okay. This looks good. Now, if you wanted to emphasize a word, this is where character styles are great for. So let's say anywhere where Aqua Excursions is mentioned, you can select that with your type tool, go to character style instead of paragraph style. We can go to new character style, and we'll just name this Aqua Excursions bold. And then anywhere that this is placed, we will just have this be, let's type in the family here, type in here. We'll do, we can even do like oblique, medium oblique. And let's see, click OK. So then all we'd have to do is select that style guide with that word selected, and it's going to offset it. Now it's a little hard to see. Maybe I'll make it a little bit more bold here. Let's do medium. Let's do black oblique. You can see kind of how it pops out now. So anywhere where this word is mentioned, you can select it and now go over to your character style and change it over here. This is kind of cool. Now, I might be missing some here. And it's just kind of a nice little added touch there. All right. Any questions about that? Okay. That's gonna, I'm trying to like make this so it doesn't have a widow down here. Okay. You could also set, like, say for instance, topics under here might be more bold. So we can do a new character style, or I'll do a paragraph style for this. I'm going to do new paragraph style, and we'll just make this Torfax copy. We'll just name it that so we know what that is. And we'll just make this more bold. And we'll make this like, well, I don't know, let's just do like a 70% black, just so you guys can see the difference here. And there you go. It's kind of different. Now you could do other stuff with this too. I'm going to double click back on here. Like for instance, let me take this to medium instead of black. You can do bullets. So let's say you want to put a bullet after each one of these. You can set bullets or numbers. I'm going to do bullets. So I'm going to click bullets, and it'll actually put the bullets there. Now the only thing is it gives you a really big space in between these. So you'll definitely need to adjust that. You could do so in tabs. Tabs are a little harder to understand, but click on tabs, and anywhere you want to left align. So you can see the copy changing. I'm pulling it closer to those bullet points. I'm adding a tab right here. And once you're done, click OK, and it kind of adds the nice tab there. Oops. If you want this to align with your bullet point, just do a shift return and hit tab again. That kind of aligns it nicely. I could do the same thing here. You know, kind of have that treated a little differently, but you know, it's easier to follow in that regards, I believe. Okay, let's see. Make this bigger. Can adjust that as we go forward. Let's go back into here. And this is where we need to set our other guides. our subheads. Oops, not that smaller subhead. Okay. Let's see here. And then there's a listing here as well. We can make that the same treatment as your bullet points. And then these are smaller subheads, maybe. And again, I'm just going to delete out those shift returns that I added in there so they're not being affected by that. All right, so smaller subhead. Okay. All right, so this is kind of what I have here. Let me delete the space in there. There we go. All right, so this is what I have so far. And of course, I don't have images in here yet. So that's going to be a nice little filler because I have a lot of room here. So that's how you would place your type in there. You can have this on the front or the back. Again, this information, you can decide on what you want. But now I would focus on the cover. Once you get all the type in there, focus on the cover. And at this point, I would definitely go in and check out your images. And I just downloaded these on my computer here. So hold on one second. Hear my clock going. Okay, so these are the kayak images that are provided in your folder here. Let me open this up. I'm going to just scroll through here so you can at least see each one of these. So definitely check these out, see which ones you want to use. And, reading through the copy, you'll kind of know which image to associate with which panel if it's based on that. Now, obviously, you're not going to use all of these. You're only to use, I believe it says here, at least 3 photos. I guess you could use most of them, but it might be too much to use all of them. All right, but pick, I'm going to slide this over for a second here. Pick a cover that's going to look, enticing. You might even want to start out with designing your cover first before you do all the type. It's completely up to you. I'm going to do something that's, going to be pretty much going from my bleed. So I'm going to go ahead and set my text frame like I did on my poster, only this is on the front panel. And I'm going to have it end kind of on this fold. Now I can kind of change this, but for now I'm just going to place it in here this size so that it's a full bleed. I'm going to do a Command D or File Place, go back on my desktop here. And you can kind of play around with this, see what images that you like and place in all different kinds here just to see which one you like. I picked out, I like this one. And I'm going to go up to Object and Fitting Fill Frame Proportionately. And that'll fit that. It's a nice image because it shows all these people, in the front having fun. And I'm going to move it over just a little bit. And it's very colorful and it allows for almost like almost a one-third grid where, you can place your elements, your headline and your logo in a nice way in here. Okay, so once that's placed, I'm going to go ahead and take my rectangle frame tool and I'm going to place do you remember that ping file that you guys exported out for your poster? Find that same ping file of your logo and place it in for your cover. Now, this is kind of getting big. I probably would get this a little smaller here. So I'm going to make this box a little smaller. Doesn't have to be huge. I should be doing the content proportionally there. you can either, depending on where you want to put it, it's kind of nice to be up here because I don't have all the, the water and the ripples kind of allowing it to be hard to read. So I have a little less contrast here. Then I'm going to take the bounding box and make sure it's centered in here. So I'm going to go to Object, Center Content. So I just put that to my fold and then to my trim and then did a little center. So I make sure that's perfectly centered. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put that headline back in there. I'm going to need to bring it to the front because that image is right now in the front. And zoom in here. Now this needs to be big, right? Because this is a headline. So we're going to select that. We're going to create a new paragraph. So I'm going to name this headline cover. And this is where you can kind of get creative with this. I don't know if you want to use that same poster fonts that you used from the poster. That could be something that you might want to do too. Or you can keep it very similar to your body copy here. It's completely up to you. Let's see if I'm going to make this big. Let me do 20. Let's do a 26. Click OK. Just see how that looks. Okay. All right. Now I need to align this. So because it's, I have everything very centered, I want that to be consistent. So I'm going to select it all and I'm going to go back to my headline cover, double click on this. And I'm going to go to indents and spacing. I'm going to choose center. Then I'm going to read this out loud. Kayak tours, sales, and service. Well, sales and service should be on the same line. So I'm going to shift select that down because it's just, there's a pause here anyway with the comma. So we're going to go ahead and just shift, return the sales and service to the bottom. What you can do is maybe make kayak tours more prevalent. And by doing that, you can go to your character styles and create new character style with that selected. Headline bold, we'll call this. And you can, choose the same font, just make it more bold. And you can even make it even bigger. You just need to select that to make it bigger. Now this is a little bit too big, so let me go back. You can even make this the color in your logo, which here I am. I have the logo in here, so let's zoom in on that while we have the chance. So once you place your logo in there, this is where you can get the colors. Take your eyedropper tool, select the colors in there, double click on your fill, and add your swatch. We're going to be converting this to CMYK later too, so if it says RGB, you're good. We're going to convert this later. Why is this selecting? Hold on. There we go. So I'm just taking that eyedropper tool and adding the RGB swatch. I have 3 colors here. Oops. I'm doing my 3 color one, so I'm going to take my eyedropper tool. Oh, what am I doing? There we go. And this is something that you can do also if you have all of your information in Illustrator. You can import this in a different way as well. But that's kind of a simple way to do it. So if I go up to Windows now after doing that and go to Color and go to Swatches, you should see them in there. There they are. Now we can convert these to CMYK. So all we would need to do is go ahead, it's already on process. Hold on 1 second. Let me just go to CMYK, click OK. And we're just clicking on that little rainbow there to change the color process there, and then clicking on CMYK color mode. So double click on the little rainbow, CMYK, click OK. All right. So now This is what I wanted to show you. Now it's in swatches. That's a good thing because when we go back to our character styles and say we want to change the black type just for the headline bold to one of the colors in the logo, we just go to character color and you can choose one of these colors. Let's do that. Red, for instance, and it changes that. Same thing with this. If we wanted to go to your paragraph style and change the, headline cover, character color to that blue, it'll change that to the blue. And then, where you position this on here is also important. Let me hide my guide so you can see a little bit better. You don't want it to be too close to the logo. You don't want it to be too close to the image. You don't want it to be not readable. So I would say a nice space here would be somewhere where there's space in between the logo and the image. Maybe pull this down a little bit closer. That's a nice little spaced layout there where you have, more room in between the logo and then the headline goes with the image. It reads together. Okay, we were talking about how we use repetition and pattern and imagery to pull through and make everything look consistent. So let's do that, and I'll show you how you can do that really easily with images. So I'm going to go ahead and take my rectangle frame tool, and I'm going to align this from my top of my left bleed to the bottom of my right bleed, all the way across. It's like one big image stretched across. I'm going to do a Command D, and I'm going to place, and bear with me here because it's hard to understand what I'm doing until you see it first. I want to place this really colorful kayak image in there. I'm going to fit it into my frame here. And then I'm going to set it to back. So I'm going to go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back. Now, obviously, it's beautiful, but I can't read the copy, right? So what I'm going to do is I want to keep that background, but I want to make the copy readable. So I'm going to take my rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw a box just kind of a little over my margin. And I'm going to make this a color. I'm going to make it white. Oops. And then I'm going to just make sure I have the size appropriately here. It's not too big, not too small. And I'm going to bring my type to the front. And then I'm going to place my the little square that I made in the background here. And what this will do is obviously give you enough contrast so that you can see the type. I'm going to do an Alt drag so I can make a copy of that. And place it over here and align it as such. Now, you don't have to have it a solid color. I'm going to make it a little opaque just because I think it'll be nice to see a little bit of the image coming through. So with that square selected, that white square, I'm going to go to opacity here in Properties. And if you don't see that, go to Window, select Properties, and you can dial this down. I wouldn't go too dark, too opaque, because then it becomes hard to read. But I would stick around anywhere above 80, 85 is a good mark. Good percentage to stay with. Yeah. So it gives you the texture behind it. So it's not like solid, but it's visually interesting. And what's nice about it, let me hide my everything here, is it gives you a really nice border that kind of flows everything together nicely. And what you can do after that, you can actually repeat this on this side too, on the inside. Just go ahead and place it in here. Set it in the back just like you did. Take your two boxes. This is what's nice. Once you have your boxes set, you can just, do an Alt drag. and, you know, align them. I have to move this though. Here, before I place those in there, let me move these aside here. I want these to all come to the front. So object, bring to the front. And then just align them for, you know, each margins space here. Okay. Oops. Grabbed the wrong one. 1, 2. There we go. And then, and we can adjust this too. I keep grabbing the text box and not the actual square here. All right. I'm going to make this one a little bit thinner here to equal out the middle part. All right. So once that's in place, you can see, and let me hide this here, how that kind of nicely unifies both front and back. Now, you could do things to make this so that the cover, let's see if I could see my guides here, it doesn't get so close to that edge. This is where the fold would be. So for instance, for this, I may put it like a little dither on it. Remember the dither I showed you? Let me pull this out so that it goes all the way into there. And what I want to do is make like a dither, so it goes from a 0% opacity to the image. So with that image selected, I'm going to go over to your gradient feather tool, and I'm going to go ahead, oops, and cut. You don't have to do a shift select. Just select in there and drag this line out right at the edge so that you're not going over the edge like this. You're right before it, so you'll have a nice color to 0 feather in there. And that's a nice little transition if you have like a weird corner issue there. And then you can place in your images based on each of your panels. So let's say you want to, let's see here. I'm going to put 3 images in here just because it's a nice evened out for 3 of these areas here. I'm going to put an image down here. So I'm going to draw out an exact image. And I would say make it so that the image is the same on every single panel. And as far as the ratio, the size, that way that, you know, it's consistent. The ratio is pretty much the same. This one can be a little different because you might have more room here. I'll show you that in a second. And I'm going to duplicate this one over here. So you have image, image, image. And then at this point, what you can do is put an image wrap on each of these so that your copy won't go too close to this. So go ahead and go up to window, or text wrap, sorry, I said image wrap. And with that square being selected, which is where your image will be, you're going to go ahead and choose wrap around bounding box. And that will bump your text up so that it's not being, you know, going behind this image. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a safe space. So I'm going to set about a 1/4 safe space all the way around. And this will allow it so that the copy is not right on the edge of that image either. I'm going to do the same thing here. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay. Now, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and figure out what we want on each of these panels. So right now it says a tour package for every taste, a guided wildlife tour, and it has them all listed. So what I would say is probably, and you could do this too, adjust this so that this will end perfectly just by pulling this up. So you don't necessarily have to do a text wrap. You can actually pull these up as well so that you can control what you want to see on each panel. So by doing that, it's bumping the next line down into this area. And then what you can do here is if you don't want, if you want whale watching to come on this side, you can pull this up so that that's bumping up to this side. And then what you'll do is just kind of balance your information here. Now it's not quite balanced, so I'm going to click up here and just see what I have going on here. So what I might do here is, because I have a lot of information here and more space here, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this information, I'm going to take this out of here, copy and delete this out of here. I could put an image here. And I'm going to put this information maybe right before this. Just go ahead and paste that in there. Because I do have a lot of space here. Okay, so I'm going to pull this down just slightly so then I can pull this and get all of that information in there. Okay. See how that kind of allows you to balance things a little bit better so that you have more space here. Everything's kind of spaced out there. I would probably copy and drag this over here, and we'll figure this out spatially wise if this is going to work or not. And then go ahead and read through this information and pick something that you think would work well for this image-wise. I'm going to pick this one for this area. File place and maybe pick, there's that little kid image in here. And you can double click inside each of these to move them if you need to manually with your iRiver kayak. Now I want to see kayak. There you go. And I think this one shows the whale one. So it talks about the whale one in this area here, whale watching. So we can make this a little bit bigger here. Pretty cool. And now you can kind of play around with this so that, if you need more room or whatever, you can play around with that, like balance it out a little bit. Trying to think of how this would work here. It's actually not too bad. Pull this in a little bit. I think this one might be a little off. I have some of my guides are off here, so I just have to make sure I am, oops, even. Because I have these little squares in here, it kind of gives me a little, I have to make sure everything's aligned perfectly. Drawing out your margins will help align everything too. And I think maybe we should pull this in a little bit more where this line is. There we go. Don't mind me. I'm just trying to get this perfect here. All right. This is where it's all kind of screwed up here. Let's do this line over again. As well as this line. So I'm just kind of equaling out my margins here with my images and my text box, or my white box. Oh, I know why this is getting all screwed up because I have my, see, I have my text wraps going on here. Yeah, it's my text wrap. Okay. That looks good. Okay, object fitting, full frame proportionally. And I'm going to pull this over so you can see the whale's head at least. Okay. All right. And then these margins can be deleted because they're kind of confusing. Let me delete these. All right. Yeah, I don't have my computer plugged in as of yet. Okay, so basically just balancing everything out. I may need to adjust some of this too in order to get that same ratio of my margin space, but you get the idea here. I just want to make sure everything's consistent and the same in every single box. Now what I would do is I would probably add, change this so you can see the kid here. A picture up here. I'm going to do the same ratio size picture up here. Fill this area in and add another picture. Let's do this one. Make this a little higher too. All right. So it's nicely, you know, balanced. And I can kind of manipulate all my other things too. I just have to even it out and all that good stuff. But don't forget, you can always double click in here if you have more image to show and your frame tool isn't showing at all. That's how you would adjust that. All right. And then just go ahead, welcome Heather, and we're gonna be wrapping it up here in a second. Go ahead and look at your copy and just make sure you don't have any widows like that, for instance, you know, and kind of do a shift select to take care of any of those situations where you have a weird, like this one here, kind of shift select these down so that they're not alone on the line here. All right. I'm just going in and changing this so we don't have weird breaks. And hyphens. Okay. All right. So you can see that we have the 2-page flat brochure. You have a nice element in the background to unify it. Your type has it's hierarchy within the type. You can see what's the most important information, and secondary information, but it's very organized. Spatially, I probably would rearrange this a little bit differently so this maybe goes together a little bit. I maybe flip these so that the images go above it. Maybe this one comes down. But kind of play around with it, see what works. And know that some of this information you can kind of flip around, like the About Us. You don't necessarily have to have it on the back page. It could be on your inside flat page, and then this could be on this page. Just know that the information that needs to be together, the main information should be on the inside. Cover obviously should be very simple and come together, in a more of an enticing way. Thank you, Leanne. All right, I know we kind of ran out of time here. Let me see. There's a lot of information to go over, and we still have the signage to get to here. When you are done, what we're going to do is convert your images to CMYK. So what you would need to do is what you did on the posters. You're going to open them up in Photoshop, and that's why I said to place them in first, because now you get an idea of how big they are. And you can go into Photoshop and resize them. And then you're going to make sure the size is correct. If you go to Window and go to Info, you can check on the size. So this one, if I check on the size of this particular image, if you go to Info, it's telling me it's 5.3 inches wide by 9.25 tall. So then I can go into Photoshop and adjust that based on that size. And, for all of these photos, you'll need to go and open them up in Photoshop, convert them to CMYK and the size given. So this one would be 3.12 by 4.56. So get them as close as you can, convert them to the CMYK like I showed you how to do the posters, and then place them into your InDesign file so they're ready for print. Don't forget, if you put any type of background image in here too, you'll need to convert that as well. So when you're ready to save this out, first you're going to do an export press quality PDF. And just don't forget, in that press quality PDF, you want to make sure that you have crop marks and bleeds checked, just like you did on your poster. You want to make sure all your pages are being exported. You have no errors in your document, which is showing no errors down here. And then when you're ready to submit, you're going to go File, and you're going to package this. So just do File, Package. And you're going to check mark all of these. You don't have to check mark the PDF because you're going to just plop the one that you just exported out into that. Hit Package. Go to your desktop, open that PDF up. Make sure it looks good, it has your crop marks in it. Go both pages. Oh, it looks great. This is the folder that has your package stuff in it. So you have your InDesign file, your document fonts. Go ahead and plop this in to that same folder. You can even just plop it into here. And then you're going to control click to compress, or File, Compress. And that's going to zip it. Okay. And that's what you're going to submit for this assignment. That was a lot of information. So what you can do is just take what you heard. I'm going to do, set up this recording as soon as it's processed. You can go in and do the steps that I showed in there. And then if you have any questions going forward from there, we can address that in the multi-session tomorrow. I have about a 2-hour multi-session if you have any questions. But what I really want to see is I want you to go about this yourself. Like, I don't want to do step-by-step with you. This is where you need to take it and go start it. And if you need to review the lecture, like I said, go through the lecture recording, go by step. And then if you have any issues tomorrow, bring in your stuff. We'll take a look at it. But that's, instead of going step by step, I want to see you kind of go forward with this. Okay. Before we get to that, let's go back to where we were. Sorry. You have an assessment as well. And this is actually a really, really easy assessment. So once you get your brochure done, this will take you, it won't take you very long. So basically read through the background here. You're going to be creating a sign. And your sign piece is going to be, it tells you the finished sign is 4 feet by 10, but you're going to scale that down to really 1 inch. So 4 feet would be really 4 inches by 10 inches. And you're going to create this in Illustrator. So you're going to create an Illustrator file that's going to be 4 inches by 10 inches. So it's going to be landscape. You're going to use your 2-spot color version of your logo that matches your other campaign components. You're going to utilize only 2 colors on that sign artwork. You're going to utilize the actual tag here. So what you're going to do is you're just going to copy this. You can delete and the website, but you can just copy this whole thing over. And go ahead and open up your Illustrator. Ten by 4. Go ahead and take your type tool. This is 10 by 4 inches. You're going to paste in that information. I would probably just delete this totally and then hit a return there. So you have 2 separate information, 2 separate lines of text, I should say. And then you're going to go to your type area character. And I would set this similar to the same font that you use maybe in your brochure. Make it a little bigger. Remember, this is a sign, so you want it to be, you want it to be big. Now this is asking for a 2-spot color, right? So it says 2-spot color version. So let's say if you did your 3 color that you placed in originally, like for instance, I did a 3 color. So let me show you that. Let's see, where's my logo? Like say for instance, you did a 3 color like I did. What you're going to do is open up your original AI file that this is the ping file that I just placed in here. And you're just going to make your 3rd color a similar color in here just to kind of give it that 2-spot color. And I don't know if I have my original one in here. You're just going to make it a 2 color instead of a 3 color. And you're going to make sure that it's Pantone and not process. Let me see if I can actually find my original. I think it's in my folder here. Hold on. This is my older color one. That's the original one. I think I tossed all my other ones. That's why I can't find my original one very easily here. By accident, I tossed it thinking, oh, I don't need this anymore. And now I need it. Okay, so you're going to go back to your original file. This isn't the same file that I did. This is different colors. But what you're going to do is you're going to go back to your original file. This one, for instance, would be a different color. So this is the AI file, is kind of where I'm getting at here. And then you're going to take and you already should have your colors in here as your Pantone colors. So go back to your original. I'm doing this a little differently because I have to redo mine. So go back to your original file that you used in your assignment 2. And you're just going to export that out for your sign. Okay. So instead of that gray, I would just use that same blue because it just calls for a 2-color. And then I would just make sure that these are Pantone colors that are being used. So just double click it there. Actually, be in here. Let's add this to the swatches. You don't have to do this because you already created yours. This is just because I'm doing it from scratch here. And okay. Let me delete all of these because it's getting me all confused. Okay. All right, so I would just need to create a duplicate and make this a Pantone color, which would be a spot color. Duplicate. And then just apply that. Now again, yours is gonna be a little different because you already have your original file. I accidentally deleted my original file for assignment 2 for this particular demo. I have my older one. So what you're gonna do is just save as, let's see here, save as, export as. And for this, you're definitely gonna do, if you're not gonna have a transparent background, choose a TIFF file for this. This will keep your Pantone colors consistent. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this on the desktop so I remember it. The only thing that you want to make sure of, and this is somewhere where, you will have a color model set to CMYK. If you were actually getting this printed with a printer, you would specify, as long as you have these colors in your swatch panel and you have it set in here, you would tell the printer, this is going to be Pantone color, and you'll give them the swatch number, and this is going to be Pantone number, whatever. And that's all you need, as long as you have it set up in your actual file and you let them know. Okay, so with that being said, let me delete this. You're going to select this, and you could just plop this in here. And just make sure, and you could do it just different variations of this, but just make sure it works for the sign, something that can be seen from far away. Make this a little bit smaller. Make sure there's enough space in between here. I've had all different kinds of signs too. Let me show you some examples, but that's pretty much how you would set that up. I want to show you some, I think I have some examples from past students too. And then you can kind of get an idea of what you can do with this, because it doesn't have to be as conservative as I did, but obviously you have to have it so it's readable. Let me see if I have any student assessments to show you here. The one thing I want you to be aware of is you want to make sure it's readable and none of the elements are getting away of the information. I don't really have any really good examples to show you here. Let's see if I have any in here. I usually do, but it looks like here's one that might be, it's a little bit more conservative too, but you get the idea. This is nice because you're seeing just a simple element of a line, and then you're kind of adjusting the size of each character copy there so that Kayak Tour Sales and Services is larger, and then you have your logo or your web address down here. Different scheme, color scheme there. Okay, hold on one second. I know you guys are typing in here and I missed some of your comments. So let me switch over. And then once you're done with that, you're going to, let me just make sure we hit upon everything here. Outline all of your fonts, and then you're going to save it as a PDF. So that's really simple. All you need to do for that, let me give you a little demo here, is you would do a select all, you go up to type and create outlines. And then you would just do a save as PDF. Free. Save it to your desktop, and then you would upload that for review. I know we're a little over time here. Let me go back to my actual presentation. I think that brochure just takes up a lot of time because there's a lot of different elements in there, but okay. Benjamin, I want you to go forward with this. I want you to listen to the recording, and I want you to try this on your own the best that you can. We can talk for sure. I'm going to, where's my chat area here? Hold on. Okay. Anybody else have any questions that you want to answer before we wrap it up? Okay. Heather, did you have a question? Okay. What's your question? Okay. What was your question about that? Okay. I'm not sure what, I don't know if you saved it out wrong because I'm not sure what you had initially. Did you resubmit it? Okay. Can you send me, resubmit it, and then email me your all your files, like zip it and email me your file, and I can take a look at it and then let you know from there, like what's going on. I think that'll probably be the best way to go. All right. Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and fix those, and then you can send it to me when it's all complete, and then I can kind of take a look at it from there. Okay, very cool. Any other questions? You're welcome. Yeah, send that over to me when you get that revised, and I can take a look at it. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up here and stop recording, and Ben, you can turn on your mic here. Let me turn off my recording. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna mute this because I don't think I can turn this off without losing you here. So here, let me pause it. I'm gonna pause it.